Good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday, and thank you for joining me as we talk about more of the Bible and get my takes and reactions as we go through it. But who am I? My name is Stuart Davis. I'm a deacon at a small church that's outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a biblical scholar. I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my congregation. I'm not trying to get you to donate to any special cause. What I am trying to do is offer exposure on what goes on in the life of what I consider to be an average Christian, average Protestant, non-denominational Christian. We can get into the intricacies of the different denominations, but the bottom line is, if you're looking to start a relationship with Christ and you're looking for answers, if you're looking for some insights, by all means, you can start here. If you're not comfortable with walking right into a church, it is something that I promote and I advise. I think it's very important for you to be to fully understand what it means to be a Christian. Church is a vital component of that, but maybe you're not ready to take that step, or maybe you're just looking to listen to some Christian commentary on things. If that's what you're looking for, welcome to the channel. Thank you for being here, and by all means, chat, comment, and leave your thoughts as well. Share this stream on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube, whichever you wish to do. It'll help support the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. So, like I said, this is just me giving my thoughts as somebody who's been a Christian all his life, and like and denominations aside, we are generally just folks trying to live day in and day out, um, just like everybody else. We have trials, tribulations. We have the same feelings everybody else does. We struggle with the same quirks and character flaws as everybody else does. But the difference is we put our faith in God and we use Him as a not just as our Lord and Savior, as someone we worship, but a being who came down and lived life as a man for us to emulate, for us to best emulate. And that we also believe that He died for our sins, and He is the sole path to salvation and to earn a place in heaven, or to be welcomed into heaven. To know God, to know Christ is to know God. So, with that said, we had a great stream last night with Eric Rollon. If you didn't catch it, I highly advise you to. We were talking about a very sensitive subject so far. I have not been uh, disciplined by the YouTubes, but again, I'm very small. This channel is very small. Hope to get it bigger. Hope to get it much bigger. But I might not be big enough for anybody to be taking too much issue with or pay attention to too much. But if not, I'll probably get a channel strike. I'll keep streaming, but I'll probably use other outlets like Odyssey or Rumble. I will continue to do it on Facebook as long as I can and go from there. But what are we talking about tonight? Tonight we're going to go back to our readings. Like I said, we've been reading the Bible cover to cover, in order, and we've finished Genesis, we've finished Exodus, and I think we're just about halfway through Leviticus, if you believe it or not, folks. Um, yeah, we'll be halfway through Leviticus tonight. We'll be 13 through 15. It is a 27 chapter long um, book in the Bible, and we are and it focuses mainly on Levitical law, the law that comes down from the guidance that God gives to the Israelites, now that they are coming together as His people. So, with what we have talked about already has been food laws, some sin offerings, what you're supposed to do, and as far as atonement for the Israelites. The atonement rules, the sacrifice rules, that all got wiped off when Christ came as the ultimate sacrifice. Um, but there was also some other issues that needed to be handled, like sanitization, proper handling of food, and many apologists will tell you that a lot of those laws have to do with the fact that sanitation wasn't as big. It was nowhere near the um, sophisticated science it is today. It is not. We do not have antibiotics. We didn't have, or they didn't have antibiotics. They didn't have sanitizers. They didn't have any of that stuff. There wasn't as much. There wasn't as much of a medical knowledge there. So what you'll see is what you notice is most of the food that's banned is some of the easiest food to screw up when you're preparing it and get sick and die. So we have moved past that. We have moved past the childbirth part, circumcision we talked about, and today we're going to be talking about skin diseases and discharges. So specifically in this one, our first chapter, chapter 13, it's going to be it's probably going to my initial thoughts are it's probably going to have to deal with leprosy. Leprosy was a big deal back then, and it's not a pretty sight. If anybody of y'all wants to do it on your own, just Google leprosy, people with leprosy. Not something you want, and something that's very, very gross. And so, uh, but it's also what we're also seeing is God giving instructions on how to handle diseases within the camp. How the it's almost like a he's giving the Israelites, in my opinion, through with Leviticus, the rules for a training camp or a training regimen, preparing them to become a great nation. What are the things that you need to do? Here are rules to live by, so that that we are as clean and healthy a society as we can be. And what can we do that? Because we will be struck down with disease from time to time. We will have issues with sanitization. What do we need to do about that? How do we get ourselves clean? How do we adapt to that so that the rest of the society does not suffer? And so he's going to get into that from here. So with that said, let's get on. Last night was a long stream. I kind of want to run through this one as fast as possible, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Regulations about defiling skin diseases. Getting right into it. Chapter 13. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when anyone has a swelling or a rash or a shiny spot on their skin, that may be a defiling skin disease. That does not include, I don't think, um, bald people and the bald part of their heads, because I know a lot of bald people have very shiny domes. It's a very shiny spot on their skin. Um, I don't think that's a defiling skin disease. I just think it's unfortunate for you all. I don't have that problem. But you might think that I wear a hat because of it. I actually just like wearing hats. Um, for so far, like I said, rounding that's last lap towards 40. Um, I still have all my hair, and I'm happy. I'm happy that's the case. Anyway, a shiny spot on their skin that may be a defiling skin disease, they must be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, who is a priest, and they will say, "You're bald, boy." The priest is to examine the sore on the skin, and if the hair in the sore has turned white and the sore appears to be more than skin deep, it is a defiling skin disease. When the priest examines that person, he shall pronounce them ceremonially unclean. Notice that, ceremonially unclean. If the shiny spot on the skin is white, but does not appear to be more than skin deep, and the hair in it has not turned white, the priest is to isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine them, and if he sees that the sore is unchanged and has not spread in the skin, he is to isolate them for another 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine them again, and if the sore has faded and has not spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce them clean. It is only a rash. I've heard people say that before. It's just a rash. They must wash their clothes and they will be clean. But if the rash does spread in their skin after they have shown themselves to the priest to be pronounced clean, they must appear before the priest again. The priest is to examine that person, and if the rash had spread in the skin, he shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. Um, Unfortunate, right? Nobody wants to be in this. Nobody wants to be in this position, but it's something that might happen, especially like, again, it was not an uncommon thing to have leprosy back then. We don't. I challenge you to find somebody who even knows of somebody who's had leprosy in your life, in your surround anybody you know. It's just not something that we deal with these days. But we do deal with people who do have defiling skin diseases, and this is not talking about skin pigmentation or birthmark or something like that, because we're talking about, again, how deep is this? It's a rash, right? It is a sore. We're talking about things that may be that may be contagious. And again, God's putting this down here as he's giving the power of basically the of being an examining doctor to the Levites, as priests, to examine these issues, and if they see that it's concerning enough, they need to be separated, and that's what we're going to get into here, because we're talking about, isolation already, ceremonially unclean, that kind of things. But what is this? I mean, this is kind of boring, stuff to some people. Maybe some of you watch Dr. Pimple Popper and you'll like the next chapter. Disgusting people. Um, then yeah. But side note, if you watch that stuff, you're that's degenerate. Pray that you're better. I'm kind of being funny here. I'm kind of being facetious. I'm kind of not. It's gross. So let's see. If the disease, oh, wait, when anyone has a defiling skin disease, they must be brought to the priest. The priest is to examine them, and if there is a white swelling in the skin that has turned the hair white, and if there is raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce them unclean. He is not to isolate them because they are already unclean. If the disease breaks out all over their skin, and so far as the priest can see, it covers all the skin of the affected person from head to foot, the priest is to examine them, and if the has covered their whole body, he shall pronounce them unclean. He shall pronounce them clean. Since it is all turned white, they are clean. But whatever raw flesh appears on them, they will be unclean. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he shall pronounce them unclean. The raw flesh is unclean, and they have a defiling disease. If the raw flesh changes and turns white, they must go to the priest. The priest is to examine them. And if the sores have turned white, the priest shall pronounce the affected person clean, and they will be clean. All right. So again, we're talking about more about, you know, what determines what's a defiling skin disease. And God isn't just telling this to the Levitical priests; He's telling this to everybody. He's making sure that the guidelines here are established for everybody. That so that the priests um aren't acting in the aren't acting in the dark with their own set of rules that they said so that they can arbitrarily say that they have some problem with somebody, and and then isolate them because they said that they got some sort of disease, even if it's like a mild rash or some sort of discoloration or whatnot, maybe a birth defect of some type. They can say you're unclean, get out of here, and there's nobody who can challenge them on that. No, we have the laws right here. So if there is an issue, you can bring it forth to Moses or one of the tribal leaders, one of the folks that have been that those issues have been delegated to. And I like that. That's what we need. We need a standard, right? If you're going to have a society and you're going to have rules, then you need to set that standard and make sure everybody has access to those rules and that standard, so that they know what it is, so that you don't have the powers that be. We talked about it last night. The government's not your friend. How do you keep the government at bay? You keep it accountable. You make sure you are informed and you're knowledgeable and you're not afraid to fight back when they are breaking the rules. So God's putting that out there. God understands. God knows all things, and we're gonna when we get into Samuel, it's one of my favorite parts. When we get into Samuel, we'll talk about that more. So, um, when someone has a boil on their skin and it heals, and in the place where the boil was, a white swelling or a reddish. Wait. There are if the disease breaks out all over their skin, and so far as the priest can see, it covers all of the skin of the affected person from head to foot. The priest is to examine them, and if the disease had covered their whole body, he shall pronounce them clean. Since it has turned white, they are clean. But whenever raw, I read all this already. I'm sorry, guys. Um, this is this hits home for me because I am deathly allergic to poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, all of that stuff. And when I get it, it boils. It boils and it weeps and it's disgusting. I feel like a disgusting human being. I would consider myself unclean, and I would want to be separated. We'll talk. We'll see what would. So I come. I come to the priest with this poison ivy issue, and he's looking at it, and he's like, "Dude, you're gross. What did you do? Roll around in it?" No, I just looked at it, and it just started doing this. He goes, "Get out of here. Just get. You. It's gross. It's discharge all over the place. You're disgusting. Don't bring anything to the temple. Carry your ass out to the out there with the lepers, because that's what it looks like. It looks like I got leprosy. When someone has a burn on their skin and a reddish white or white spots appear in the raw flesh of the burn, the priest is to examine the spot. And if the hair in it has turned white and it appears to be more than skin deep, it is a defiling disease that has broken out in the burn. The priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. But if the priest examines it and there is no white hair in the spot, and if it is not more than skin deep and has faded, then the priest is to isolate them for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine that person, and if it is spreading in the skin, priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. However, the spot is unchanged. If, however, the spot is unchanged and has not spread in the skin but is faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. It is only a scar from the burn. If a man or a woman has a sore on their head or chin, this is it. The priest is to examine the sore. If it appears to be more than skin deep and the hair in it is yellow and thin, the priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease on the head or chin. But if, when the priest examines the sore, it does not seem to be more than skin deep and there is no black hair in it, then the priest is to isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine the sore, and if it is not spread and there is no yellow hair in it and does not appear to be more than skin deep, then the man or woman must shave themselves except within the affected area. Wait. Oh, head or chin. I was about to say women. Why would the women be shaving their chin? They must wash their clothes and they will be clean. But if the sore does spread in the skin after they are pronounced clean, the priest is to examine them. And if he finds that the sore has spread in the skin, he does not need to look for yellow hair. They are unclean. If, however, the sore is unchanged so far as the priest can see, and if the black hair has grown in it, the affected person is healed. They are clean, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. This must have been kind of difficult. If you had a lot of people coming to you like this and you're trying to remember, does that look different? Not like today, you can just take a picture of it and you're like, hey, here's a picture of what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. Okay. I got to do this all on memory. And look, you're Levitical priest. You're supposed to be a priest. Damn it, Jim, I'm a priest, not a doctor. Um, and that's kind of what you got to be. You got to be a priest and a doctor here, and you got to know your patients, right? You got to know your flock. You got to know your patients, both up here, over here, and in their body. It's a big job. It's a big job, and I don't see any real accounts on where we talk about priests who aren't good at their job in that respect. We just read about priests that are not good at their job and being holy and faithful. When a man or a woman has white spots on the skin, the priest is to examine them, and if the spots are dull white, it is a harmless rash that is broken out on the skin. They are clean. A man who has lost his hair and is bald is clean. Oh, I was going to make a joke about my brother. Oh well, you're clean, brother. If he has lost his hair from the front of his scalp and has a bald forehead, he is clean, or five head for some of y'all. But if he has a reddish white sore on his bald head or forehead, it is a defiling skin disease breaking out on his head or forehead. The priest is to examine him, and if the swollen sore on his head or forehead is reddish white, like a defiling skin disease, the man is diseased and is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean because of the sore on his head. Anyone with such a defiling disease must wear torn clothes, let their hair be unkept, cover the lower part of their face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. As long as they have the disease, they remain unclean. They must live alone. They must live outside the camp. Yeah, they'll colonize together. They must live alone apart, I think is probably where that's translating to, because they have to be outside the camp. You don't look, you don't just have you when you've got a skin disease, you don't just go out of the camp. You've got to look and act the part. You've got to have your hair unkempt. You got to tear your clothes. You got to look like a bum, and then you got to run around everywhere you go screaming unclean, unclean, so everybody knows. But hey, what you're trying to do is just make sure everybody knows what's going on. In I remember when I was in basic training in the army at Fort Knox, we had basic training can be stressful for some folks, to the point where it is too stressful for them. And so, if you become a risk to yourself, you are separated from the platoon and you are put in a different group. I don't know what the name of it was. We just saw them go everywhere. Uh, we just saw them go everywhere together. It is folks who are under direct drill sergeant or cadre or base cadre supervision. They would wear like these pink road vests, these pink safety vests, the mesh, and it said LOD on the reflective part of the belly and the back area. And the LOD standard for line, or I'm sorry, not LOD, LOS. Uh, LOS was written on the front and the back, and the LOS stood for line of sight, meaning you had to be within line of sight of drill sergeant or cadre at all times because you were a risk to yourself. I don't know if it was you a risk to yourself and others, but specifically a risk of yourself. I know for a fact. But the reason we had that is that we knew that somebody those were that's how you knew who they were, and I don't think it's not meant to be a shaming thing, because most of the time those folks are being cycled out for the most part. They're being cycled out of the military. They washed out because the stress was too much for them. Um, and But it was just so that the not so much for us as the trainees, but for the trainers, like I said, drill sergeants and base cadre knew, don't, if you see one of them kind of trying to sneak off or something, that's something you should be paying attention to. So again, to draw attention to them, that's why, instead of, because they didn't have reflective safety vests back then like that, do something that you have to do. You have to stick out as somebody who looks unwell, apart from the whole skin thing. But maybe it's like a small bit of ringworm or something like that, or that you've got, and you've got to be unclean for a while. Um, you've got to look the part so that people know what you are, and then when you shout unclean, unclean, they know to stay away from you, because the concern there is that it's something that can spread, and we don't want to be putting half of the nation of Israel outside of the camp. I mean, this is just simple. This is just simple sanitation, and it seems simple to us now, but maybe not then. Regulations about defiling molds. Do you have a mold? Do you have a fungus? Thinking about the Sum 41 cover. Does this look infected? And the guy's like doing this. It's disgusting. As for any fabric that is, as for any, we're talking about clothes apparently. As for any fabric that is spoiled with a defiling mold, any woolen or linen clothing, any woven or knitted material, linen or wool, or any leather or anything made of leather, if the affected area in the fabric, the leather, the woven or knitted material, or any leather article that is greenish or reddish, is of defiling mold, it must be shown to the priest. The priest is to examine the affected area and isolate the article for 7 days. On the 17th day, he is to examine it if the mold is spread in the fabric, the woven or knitted material, or the leather, whatever that's used, it is a persistent defiling mold. The article is unclean. He must burn the fabric, the woven or knitted material, or wool or linen, or any leather article that has been spoiled. Because the defiling mold is persistent, the article must be burned. Get your nasty stuff into that furnace. Um, Man, you got to imagine it's kind of like it's got to be kind of like the cleaners, right? You got to write a ticket to make sure you get your stuff back. But if when the priest examines it, or you think about the luggage carousel at the airport, everybody's trying to figure out which is theirs or waiting for theirs or whatnot. They don't have the carousel. You just walking around. It's like, oh, this looks like mine, or hey, what did you? Is it something like that where it's open, anybody can grab it? Probably not. You probably got to describe it to to one of the priest orderlies or assistants or whatever, the gophers, and say, "Hey, I did this," and they bring it something back, and you're like, "No, that's not mine," or they lost it. Things this is probably some bureaucratic problems that this presents, but again, it's all part of what you have to do in order to be a sanitary society. But if, when the priest examines it, the mold has not spread in the fabric, the woven or knitted material, or the leather article, he shall order that the spoil article be washed. Then he is to isolate it for another 7 days. After the article has been washed, the priest is to examine it again. And if the mold has not changed its appearance, even though it has not spread, it is unclean. Burn it, no matter which side of the fabric has been spoiled. If, when the priest examines it, the mold has faded after the article has been washed, he has to tear the spoiled part out of the fabric, the leather, or the woven or knitted material. But if it reappears in the fabric and the woven or knitted material in the leather article, it is a spreading mold. Whatever has the mold must be burned. Any fabric, woven, or knitted material, or any leather article that has been washed and is rid of the mold must be washed again, and then it will be clean. These are the regulations concerning defiling molds in woolen or linen clothing, woven or knitted material, or any leather article for pronouncing them clean or unclean. Whew, this is long. Phew. How long is 15? 15 is a little lengthy too. 14 is long as hell. No, wait. 14 is very long. Sorry, God. Didn't mean to describe it in that manner. Cleanse chapter 14, cleansing from defiling skin disease. You've contracted a defiling skin disease. What do I do next? Well, here you go. The Lord said to Moses, these are the regulations for any diseased person at their time of their ceremonial cleansing when they are brought to the priest. The priest is to go outside the camp and examine them. If they have been healed of their defiling skin disease, the priest shall order that 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for the person to be cleansed. Then the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed over the fresh water in a clay pot. He is to take the live bird and dip it together with the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop into the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. That feels messed up. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the defiling disease and then pronounce them clean. After that, he is to release the live bird in the open fields. Okay. So there's a little ritual that needs to be done. Oh. The person to be cleansed must wash their clothes, shave off all of their hair, and bathe with the water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. After this, they may come into the camp, but they must stay outside their tent for 7 days. On the seventh day, they must shave off all of their hair. Again, I guess. They must shave their head, their beard, their eyebrows, and the rest of their hair. They must wash their clothes and bathe themselves with water, and they will be clean. On the 8th day, they must bring 2 male lambs and one ewe lamb, a year old, each without defect, along with 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. Not an actual log, that's a unit of measure. I can see by the annotation up there. Oh, I'm reading. Guys, I'm sorry. I thought I'd share my screen. What happens the day after a very long stream? I'm a little out of it. There we go. Thought y'all could see all this. My bad. I can tell because of the annotation over log of oil. Over log and log of oil. The priest who pronounces them clean shall present both the one to be cleansed and their offerings before the Lord at the entrance to the tent meeting. Then the priest is to take one of the male lambs and to offer it as a guilt offering along with the log of oil. He shall wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He is to slaughter the lamb in the sanctuary area where the sin offering and the burnt offering are slaughtered. Like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot. The priest shall then take some of the log of oil, pour it on the palm of his own hand, dip his right forefinger into the oil in his palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of it before the Lord 7 times. The priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the right of on the thumb of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm, the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed and make atonement for them before the Lord. So there's your way. There's your ritual back in. Um, Made me think of something right there. What if you had a foot fungus, like you had a toe fungus going on? For like your toenail fungus. Man, what if you can't get rid of that? What if you were stuck out because you can't get rid of your toe fungus? Type F. Then the priest is to sacrifice the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from their uncleanliness. After that, the priest shall slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar together with the grain offering and make atonement for them. They will be clean. If, however, they are poor and cannot afford these, or they've been out in that yard in that area for so long that they don't have any money left, they must take one male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for them, together with a tenth of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering, a log of oil, and two young pigeons, at such as they can afford, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. I guess maybe they have a community group where the community gets together and puts forth that stuff so folks can come back. Um, like dude man with the toenail fungus. On the eighth day, they must bring for them their cleansing to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest is to take the lamb for the guilt offering together with the log of oil and then wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He shall slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering and take some of its blood. Put it on the lobe of the right ear, the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. The priest is to pour some of the oil in the palm of his own left hand, and with the right forefinger sprinkled some of the oil from his palm 7 times before the Lord. Some of the oil in his palm he is to put on the same places he put the blood of the guilt offering, on the lobe of the right ear, and the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot. The rest of the oil in his palm, the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed to make atonement for them before the Lord. Then he shall sacrifice the doves or the young pigeons, such as the person can afford. One is a sin offering, and the other is a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. Whew, I'm rushing through that. These are the regulations for anyone who has a defiling skin disease who cannot afford regular offerings for their cleansing. This is good. Something for look. People got to be able to come back, and not everybody is of means. You're going to have rich people in this in the camp of the Israelites and poor people alike. Cleansing from defiling molds. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you enter the land of Canaan, which I'm giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mold in that house in a house in that land, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like a defiling mold in my house." So again, all right. So not only are the priests, doctors, um, now they're also general contractors. You got to come in there and inspect that mold. Your Serve Pro guys. You got to come in there and be like, "Yep, that's a mold in somebody's house." That's a busy job. This is a lot busier than I initially thought. I never really put this all together. The priest is to order the house to be emptied before he goes in to examine the mold, so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest is to go in and inspect the house. He is to examine the mold on the walls, and if it has greenish or reddish depressions that appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest shall go out the doorway of the house and close it up for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest shall return to inspect the house. If the mold is spread on the walls, he is to order that the contaminated stones be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town. You must have all the inside walls of the house scraped and the material that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside the town. Then they are to take other stones, replace these, and to take new clay and plaster the house. I don't know how much this affected them while they were wandering, because we're talking about stone walls here. But again, God is putting these rules in place, not just throughout the journey, the wandering, in search of the promised land. He's also talking about once they reach the promised land. That's probably going to be comforting for all these people who are not very faithful to go, oh, he's making rules for us to be for when we're able to build houses with stone and clay. They probably didn't pick that up. Or if they did, they just didn't believe it. Israelites are a hot mess. If the defiling mold reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house scraped and plastered, the priest is to go in and examine it. If the mold is spread in the house, it is a persistent defiling mold. The house is unclean. Bro, I hope you got insurance. It must be torn down. Its stones, timbers, and all the plaster and taken out of the town to an unclean place and promptly burned, I'm sure. Gross. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash their clothes because I just got to eat or sleep in this house full of mold. That's what thing. How bad is that mold problem if you're replacing the stones and it's still there? But if the priest comes to examine it and the mold is not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean because the defiling mold is gone. To purify the house, he has to take 2 birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds over fresh water in a clay pot. Then he is to take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn. And scarlet yarn and the live bird, dip them into the blood of the dead bird and the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall purify the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, and the hyssop. How are you purifying with the live bird? Are you just like holding it around or letting him flap and fly around? It'd be all interesting to see this in action. Since these Mosaic laws should still be in effect, are the Jewish folks still doing this? That'd be an interesting thing to know. Then he is to release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. In this way, he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. These are the regulations for any defiling skin disease, for a sore, for the defiling molds in fabric, or even in a house, and for a swelling, a rash, or a shiny spot, not to include baldness, unfortunately, because I like making fun of bald people. To determine when something is clean or unclean. These are the regulations for defiling skin diseases and defiling molds. All right, last chapter, folks. Thanks for hanging in there if you have so far. Chapter 15, discharges causing uncleanliness. Yep, here's for all you Zit fans. And y'all can promptly go pray for forgiveness for enjoying that kind of stuff. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any man has an unusual bodily discharge, such a discharge is unclean. It absolutely is. And why is God trying to needing to tell people this? Whether it comes from flowing, whether it continues flowing from his body or is blocked, it will make him unclean. This is how his discharge will bring about uncleanliness. Any bed the man with a discharge lies on will be unclean, and anything he sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches his bed must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. Whoever sits on anything that the man with a discharge sat on must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. Whoever touches the man who has a discharge must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. If the man with the discharge spits on anyone who is unclean, what are you doing spitting? If you're spitting on people, they must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening when they're going to be promptly beaten for spitting on people. Disgusting. Everything the man sits on when riding will be unclean, and whoever touches any of the things that were under him will be unclean until evening. Whoever picks up those things must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be clean. They will be unclean till evening. Anyone the man with a discharge touches without rinsing his hands with water must wash their clothes. We make Febreze. Febreze doesn't take care of the mold. It doesn't take care of this discharge, Liz. This is gross as hell. He goes, "Oh, are you gonna spray Febreze on all the things with the discharge? No, you're gonna be spraying some not Clorox. What is the spray? What is like 409 or something like that? Yeah. I'm not gonna say that word, but all of this stuff is worse than that. Unless you've got a comorbidity, it's gonna get grosser though, Liz. Just wait. Just wait, not really grosser, but it's gonna get a little bit more. It's gonna get a little lewd. It's gonna get a little lewd in here. Everything the man sits on when riding will be unclean, and whoever touches any of the things that were under him will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up those things must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. Because, of course, anyone the man with a discharge touches without rinsing his hands with water must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. I got real close to the dirty guy at work. That's so I gotta be. I can't come in the house until this evening. A clay plot, a clay pot that the man touches must be broken, and any wooden article is to be rinsed with water. So imagine having some nice clay pot and that dude touches it and you got to break it. He's so mad. When a man is cleansed from his discharge, he is to count off 7 days from his for his ceremonial cleansing. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with fresh water, and he will be clean. On the eighth day, he must take two doves or two young pigeons and come before the Lord in the entrance to the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. The priest is to sacrifice them. The one as a sin offering, the one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. Oh, are you reading ahead of me, Liz? You're reading ahead of me. Um, feel like there's a lot of sacrificing of doves right now going on because we're talking about stuff that's not on the Day of Atonement. We're just talking about going to the temple meeting because you just need to get back into the camp. You got to. I wonder if people are you finding these? Do you got like dove catchers in the wild, pigeon catchers in the wild? No. Here we go. When a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body with water, and he will be unclean until evening. Any any clothing or leather that has semen on it must be washed with water, and it will be unclean until evening. When a man has his relations of a sexual nature with a woman and there is an emission of semen, I would hope there would be. Both of them must bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. I imagine I imagine since the people didn't have their own bathrooms, I think in a lot of these places that since much of this was communal, I mean, you knew who was getting it on a regular basis if they were abiding by these rules. I don't. I need to get Eric on here to talk to me about these. How much of the Mosaic, the Levitical laws and the Pentateuch are which one of them still apply? How many of them still apply today? Because we're also going to get ready to get something for very uncomfortable for women and how the expectations for them during their uh, during their monthly time. When a woman has a regular flow of blood, the impurity of her monthly period will last 7 days. And anyone who touches her will be unclean until evening, and also probably yelled at. No offense, y'all are mean. Anything she lies on during her period will be unclean, and everything she sits on will be unclean, including Rachel and her camel. Rachel's camel was unclean, apparently. Anyone who they didn't have the rules yet, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyone who touches her bed will be. Oh wait, she was lying about that. She was lying about that. She just said it to keep the guy from searching under her. Anyone who touches her bed will be unclean, and they must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. Anyone who touches anything she sits on will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. Whether it is the bed or anything she was sitting on, when anyone touches it, they will be unclean until evening. Okay. I mean, we got blood. We do have a bodily discharge, and again, we don't live. The Israelites are not living in, not even in 1800s level sanitation. Mark 5 is that the hang on, let me pull that up real quick. Mark 5:25, the Bible Gateway 25:34. And a woman is there who was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. Oh yeah. Oh, I remember this. That's right, because she's the one who grabs him. And he's like, Who touched me? One of y'all touch me? Turn about. You think that maybe Jesus might have been angry or something like that. One of y'all touch me, or it's like, hey, who was there? You always wonder what you lose it in text. You lose the context. You lose the tenor of the voice. Um, where's 34? He said to her daughter, "Your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Well, yeah, but that doesn't. I mean, that doesn't say that it doesn't apply anymore. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm saying. Because we know the sin offering, and this might be my own very easily could be my own biblical ignorance here, but we know that the offerings to the Lord are cast out because of Christ's. Well, the Old Testament tells her to sends her away, and this is to me, and I tend to like I said at the beginning of the stream, I side with a lot of apologists on this, where most of this stuff is done if for sanitation purposes, because we're talking about oftentimes most of these few chapters have just talked about molds, skin diseases, stuff like that, and how to affect that. But I mean, I think that the woman in that she is not any different from the blind man or the paralyzed man, or I mean, you can even consider Lazarus, because this is a miracle that he has performed. She is suffering from something that is way different from the normal, right? Because most people aren't blind, most people aren't paralyzed. She is afflicted with something, and Jesus heals her. But he says that because obviously they don't bleed for 12 years nonstop. And man, can't imagine the misery of that. But and I love he's got such a great thing when he's like, your faith is what saved you, not even me. Your faith in God, because we talk about the mustard seed, your faith in God, your faith in me, that you just reached out, and you just to reach out. However, okay, I think I'm picking up on what you're talking about, because she would be considered unclean, so she had no business touching him. Okay. But yeah, no, I think that's okay. That's a good angle. I like that. That because he sends her away, he doesn't consider himself unclean and go down that route. Um, that's a good suggestion right there. Because yeah, like I said, I really want to talk that's a really good point to bring up, to talk about, how much of things, um how much of these Levitical laws are still applicable, right? Um, where do we go? We leave off of the 24. Yeah, yeah. Um, probably not many men interested in her either. So you can imagine the kind of that's a lonely life, right? I mean, I imagine I imagine it's just like somebody afflicted with chronic leprosy. You just what I say, like a worse version of the guy I was talking about. Like you got a foot fungus in your toenail, right? And you just can't get rid of it, because some people can't. Some people can't. Uh, no, luckily, I don't. But I know people who have it, and imagine be like, it won't go away. It won't go away. Please, what do I got to do? What do I got to do to God to perform this miracle to get rid of this toe fungus? Because I'm stuck here in a leper colony because I got nowhere else to go because of my daggone toe. But imagine having your period for 12 years. Ugh, that's not that's not a good life to live. But again, it's a miracle, and she doesn't, and because of her faith, she doesn't have to live 13 years with it or 14 years with it. She can start fresh, start from scratch, and good for her. Blessed is she. Yeah, and yeah, like I said, I think that makes a very good point, about whether about how we treat these, right? Um, but like I said, I would like to. I feel like that's enough to justify it. I feel like that's enough to justify it, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how strong of a case that is. Um, in light of everything, I think it's kind of strong. I would be interesting to see what other people. It's a very convenient way because that's not how we live these days, right? Men usually try to avoid women on their period for different reasons. It's just because we just don't want to get yelled at. But you know, um, we don't put women outside the house because of this, and that's because we it's just something we live with, right? But again, we're in a different society and culture, but technologically, because we're not observing. I'm not observing the food laws. I know some people who do, but I don't observe the food laws because I don't think they apply anymore. Because again, we're talking about these are very much kind of fall into that. The rules are here to keep everybody sanitary because we're a group. We're millions of Israelites here. We're millions of Israelites moving around for 40 years, and then we're all going to be in one city, right? How do we keep ourselves healthy and strong? And I think that this is a good disciplined way of doing it. And not only that, just instructions for you to do just because God told you to freaking do them. Where were we at? If a man has sexual relations with her and her monthly flow touches him, he will be unclean for 7 days. And any bed he lies on will be unclean. You get out the house too, dude. When a woman has a discharge of blood for many days at a time other than her monthly period or has a discharge that continues beyond her period, she will be unclean as long as she has the discharge, like for 12 years. Just as in the days of her period, any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean, and as is her bed during her monthly period, and anything she sits on will be unclean, as during her period. Anyone who touches them will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. Imagine being the dude like today, like you did. It happened the day before the Super Bowl, and it was supposed to be. You're not allowed to go into anybody's house. You just got to peek in through the window and watch the game. Got him. Wife's like, what? Well, I guess that means you can stay home and hang out with me. We can be unclean together. When she is cleansed from her discharge, and she must count off 7 days, and after that she will be ceremonially clean. On the eighth day, she must take two doves or two young pigeons and bring them to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The priest is to sacrifice one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. In this way, he will make atonement for her before the Lord for the uncleanliness of her discharge. You must keep the Israelites separate from things that make them unclean, so they will not die in their uncleanliness for defiling my dwelling place, which is among men. Right? It's an example, right? I'm teaching you to keep my place is holy. It needs to be clean. This is what we need to do. But again, this is an example. This is your training for to prepare you for arriving and being a society. These are the regulations for a man with discharge, for anyone made unclean by an emission of the Siemens, for a woman on in her monthly period, or for a man or a woman with a discharge, and for a man who has sexual relations with a woman who is ceremonially unclean. And there we go. That very uncomfortable series of chapters in Leviticus where we talk about stuff that kind of makes everybody squirm a little bit. And also think about all the times that maybe you have been ceremonially unclean often, often, and not talking. And I'm not going to say it specifically about women in their time, right? But man, you got to think about what kind of major inconvenience that is. Like you can't go in the house during, so what, 3 to 5 days, and then a week after that. So 12 days out of each month. It's almost half the month. Whew, man. Glad I'm a dude. No offense, ladies. Um, so that said, we are now half officially past halfway of Leviticus. We are trudging through it. We are trudging through it. And then we got Numbers and Deuteronomy, and that will round out the Pentateuch, and we will continue after that. But, folks, if you've stuck around this long, God bless you. Thank you for trying to for holding in there. This is very dry. It was very much longer than I wanted it to be. I wanted this to be a half-hour show. And it's almost an hour. So again, Billy Dyer's coming on soon. Once we iron out the details there, we will make that public. We'll make those dates official. And I think that that's going to be a recurring thing, much like with my friend Eric Roland, who will continue to be coming on these Tuesdays. We talk after the show, as we always do. And he's got some ideas, some good ideas for what we're going to continue to do. And then, again, Thursday, the 24th of February, Reverend Hans Fine will be on to talk about humor in the Bible and in Christianity. He is downright hilarious. So, that said, I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow night. We'll talk about this some more, and we will go from there. Also, reached out on Twitter for any of you who are Twitter people. Christian Mario, who I reached out to him. He is going to come on, so we're going to get some Zoomer, maybe. I think he's a Zoomer. We're going to get some Zoomer insights into what it's like to be at that age. Early 20s in today's society, and all the things that come along with Christianity, and life, where they intersect, which is everywhere. So that said, everybody, you guys have a good evening. God bless. Godspeed.